Welcome back to another episode of Inside Multifamily Access Control. I'm joined again with Colin. Thank you very much for taking the time, Colin.
Hello, everybody.
Yep. So again, this is sponsored by Salto. We appreciate you all taking the sponsorship and helping us put this together. And every week, Colin and I get together. We talk about all things access control and all things multifamily. And today, pretty excited to have a friend of the industry in the multifamily space, a thought leader, Ben Brichta. Thank you very much for taking the chance. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. So if you don't mind, so today we're going to talk about data, but before we jump into that, can you just give a little bit of background on yourself and the company? I think people would love to hear that.
Sure, happy to. So I work for a company called the X Company. I'm a partner in the business. I've worked with the X Company for going on 7 years now. We are a real estate investment and development company focused on, multifamily real estate. I think there's a couple things that sets us apart from a lot of our contemporaries. We like to provide what we call full spectrum living options. So it's apartments, it's a rent by the bedroom program, what a lot of people call co-living, and also a pretty robust fitness programming membership option, along with co-working events, F&B, and kind of lounge pool deck space that serves all of those functions. We're really focused on kind of being the first consumer-facing brand in the traditional real estate space. There's a lot of consumer-facing brands out there in co-living, but not necessarily in the own, operate, build kind of business line. And so we're really focused on coming out strong in that category.
Very cool. Yeah, I could see how that would be beneficial. And I guess when you're doing all of the differences, and if we're to talk about data, how do you all value it? How do you use it to make decisions? If you can give us some insight on what data means to you all.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. There's really no way for me to overstate how important it is, and really it comes down to us thinking of ourselves as a consumer-facing, consumer-centric organization, and so independent of just building buildings, which we do in order to kind of increase our capacity, member capacity, right? You need a certain number of spaces and a certain number of square footage for every member. Outside of that, all of the decisions that we make are really about how do we learn as much as we possibly can about our customer, because it's through that we're able to kind of improve the product and improve the member experience. So it's foundational to who we are as a company. It's foundational to the way that we organize ourselves internally, from like an organizational structure perspective. But like I said, it's kind of impossible to overstate how important it is.
So with that, Ben, what's some of the data that access control is able to provide you? Both kind of operationally and planning. What is some of that data that you value from the access control side of things?
Yeah, I mean, there's a kind of baseline. In our organization, we talk about things in levels, and there's 3 levels. Kind of level 1 is kind of status quo, right? So in the case of, like, if you were looking at a apartment building, level 1 would be a normal apartment building, what everybody else is doing. Level 2 is like pushing the envelope a little bit, and level 3 is the best apartment building you've ever seen. It changes the game. There's no comparison. And so for us, a level 1 in terms of data is things like how many people are using our gym every day, right? That's something that's very easy. It's something that the kind of base level Salto platform and service provides, you know, very easily with kind of off-the-shelf reports and stuff like that. And we've been collecting that data and using that data for a long time now. I'd say that the kind of aspirational use of data, and this is something that we're really just starting to be able to execute on based on a number of other changes, both kind of organizationally and from a hardware and software perspective. The kind of aspirational use of data is to take the data that we collect from our access control system and pair it with other sorts of data that we also collect, you know, through the normal course of business. But it's through that connection that you start to actually uncover, you know, real insight into who our customers are. So I'll give you one example using the gym data as the kind of backdrop. So where before we could say, okay, in this building, you know, 60% of our tenants are using the gym, and of the 60%, let's say another 60% are using it multiple times a week. That's great. That's a sign that we should, you know, build more gyms. But, you know, it's not like we would ever not build a gym, because it's kind of just baseline at this point in terms of being competitive in the marketplace. So where we're at now is pairing that usage data to actual customer data about like buying decisions. So let's fast forward into the future. Joe Schmo decides to not renew with us, but Jane Doe does. And we can then go back and look and say, okay, how many times did Joe Schmo go to the gym versus how many times did Jane go to the gym? And, you know, if Jane Doe goes to the gym, let's say 5 times over the course of a month, and Joe Schmo goes to the gym, let's say 2 times over the course of the month, and Jane Doe's the one that's renewing, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, how do I get all of my customers into the gym 5 times a month, right? That's just like one example of taking totally available off-the-shelf data, things that every single multifamily owner has at their current, you know, has access to now, but just kind of cutting the data in a different way that actually makes it very actionable and powerful.
Question for you on that. Is there somebody specifically within your company that you have, like a data scientist, or is it sort of people have access to it, or like with traditional reports, or, you know, how do you all, is it just an embedded thing without the organization? Talk to me a little bit about the structure of which you have.
Sure. So there's 2 people in our organization that are really leading the charge on this stuff. One is we brought on a director of innovation, and his job is really just to go around and see all the things that multifamily traditionally does very poorly, and think about ways that we could do it better, either by you know, process-related improvements, or by bringing technology that's traditionally not found in the multifamily space into the multifamily space. And then we also brought on really a handful of people that come from heavy operational backgrounds. And when I say operational, I mean like food service, like running restaurants, running kind of like professionally managed co-working spaces, stuff like that. And these are obviously consumer kind of centric, consumer facing organizations or types of companies. And so by bringing in those people from tech, people from restaurants, people from co-working, people from the kind of boutique fitness world, we're able to kind of put the pieces together in ways that are not necessarily unique for you know, industry at large, but seem to be pretty unique from a multifamily perspective.
Yeah, very cool on that. And so with that, Ben, do you with how much value you guys place on data, are you factoring that into ROI conversations and things of that nature as you're planning and saying, hey, we're investing in getting the data in some of these decisions you're making?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, all this stuff costs money, right? the people internally, and then for sure the hardware, and to a amazingly increased degree the kind of software too. Like if you were to look at our kind of deal level underwriting over the last 5 years, the amount of money that we're allocating towards kind of ongoing expenses related to maintaining this data set, and finding clever ways of putting it together is, I don't know, 5-fold, 10-fold. I mean, it's a lot. And so, yeah, we're thinking about it very much. We're a little unique in that we also intend to own the buildings for the long haul. And so I think that changes the way that we view kind of CapEx and OpEx and the way that you're asking about it. We're structured internally in a PropCo and OpCo structure. So there's kind of capital availability directed at the physical process of developing and owning real estate, and then there's capital allocated towards the operational intensity. And so to answer your question bluntly, yes, but it's more focused on the operational side of the business than it is on the kind of traditional property side of the business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it does. So on that, so kind of that operating versus planning, do you leverage some of the same data sets from operational assessment and using the data in your everyday operational as you do in that planning, or is there some different data on the operational side that you maybe value versus the planning side?
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, it would all inform everything. Honestly, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Like I said, in a perfect world, we'd be able to use data like the example I gave, where does going to the gym a certain amount of times increase the likelihood of a renewal by X percentage? Like theoretically, we'd be able to use data like that to start informing acquisition decisions, right? And like not even like which cities or neighborhoods to go to, but like, is this corner better than this corner, right? I mean, you can imagine, learning enough about our customers where in the same way that like Starbucks decides whether to go on one side of the street or another based on the traffic flow during rush hour, like we can start to do the same, right? But we're not quite there yet. And we're not quite there yet because it's this kind of middleware piece, or like connecting the different data sets that's really been the challenge. Like we have all of this data, but we haven't had the right mechanisms to really leverage it yet.
Yeah, I could imagine that that becomes even more of a problem. It's one of those things. It's like a garden in the backyard that it goes untended for a while, and you have more and more and more and more, and you have to figure out how to get that under control so that you can use that data. But it's got to be. It's actually too. Give me your thoughts on it. But knowing that you have it and not being able to use it, it's got to get a little bit frustrating on that end. Or is it just like one of those things that that's there and you'll get to it when you can? Is that? I mean, what's your thoughts around, or the approach that you get to it?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of alluded to this before, but I mean, we're really starting to structure our organization, from an internal, team and who works on what perspective around a kind of data infrastructure strategy, because unless you do that, you're not really being intentional about what you're collecting and why, right? And like, you really need to know those things in order to do it kind of efficiently, right? It's like the first step is like, what are the things that are important to collect? Is it important to collect gym usage data? It might be, or it might not be. For our customers, we think it really is, but for other people, that might not be the thing. And so I'd say, the first, going back in time, that was where we were just kind of collecting data indiscriminately. And now that we're trying to be more intentional about it, we're going through the process of saying, okay, like what are the things that can be indicative of kind of customer happiness or customer success? And how do we better position ourselves to collect more actionable data and structure ourselves and our teams in a way to be able to leverage that more actionable data over time? But honestly, like it's not visible in the way that you were just describing it. Like it wasn't driving us crazy because it never really, because of the way that we were structured and the way that we thought about our business and our relationship to our customers, we didn't know how much power and information we even had because it was so siloed, right? And so we're playing catch up, and I think the real estate industry in general is playing catch up. You know, it's the world is moving towards thinking about maximizing lifetime value of your customer, right? That's the revenue model, you know, recurring revenue model business. That's software as a service. That's blank as a service, right? That's what it is. And real estate hasn't really been forced to think about that for a number of reasons, which you don't have to go and get into now. But you know, the industry is playing catch up.
Yeah, no, I you can definitely see that. I mean, at least the conversation is starting to happen, which is good. And I guess since we're in the access control, hardware, IoT space, if you would, are there things that companies, and I know Salto has it unlocked for you, so you don't have to worry about it, but like everybody else, right? Is there anything that they can do to help to make it easier for you all to make that data actionable, or make it be able to, you know, be brought into a system? Is there anything that they can do to help to do that?
Yeah. And in my mind, the answer is pretty simple. It's open architecture. It has to be open architecture, right? Without that, the cost and expense of connecting the dots is enormous, right? I'm not a technology company, so like it's not worth it for me to build the middleware piece. I mean, if I had $1 million to go, you know, build this kind of custom AI machine that like was, you know, taking over the world, like I would love to do that. It's just not the business that we're in. And so picking software partners that are fundamentally open is driving all of our decisions. And I mean, I don't know if this is helpful, and like maybe this is going down the wrong direction given our current company here, but like, I mean, we have a project that's delivering Q4, Q1, somewhere in, you know, sometime over the winter. And a couple months ago, we made the switch from Salto SVN to Salto KS for exactly that reason. Like midstream, we had already bought out the system. Everything was done. Like literally locks were on site, and we sent the locks back because it's that important, right? You need to start out on the right foot, or else you're just never going to get there.
No, I think that's important. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean, we talk about some of these things, like our last one, the discussion was around how to buy things without having to worry afterwards. And part of that is the openness side of them and the ability for things to be plug and play. And that is a change within our industry. So hearing it from you just cements it even more, that where things need to go and what people need to start doing more of is the open side of this in order. And what's interesting is, I know that was never necessarily a specification that you would see from somebody like in your position that would be buying products like ours before. It would be like, you know, what's the BHMA rating and what, you know, what's the fire ratings and things like that, right? To where now from the data side and the software end, having openness is important. And it's a message that we try to get across to people to do more of. So that's wonderful. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
So I think that openness is very, very important, right? And we're dealing with that all the time as we work on platforms and ecosystems and all of that sort of stuff. On that, I mean, I don't know if you want to answer this now or not, Ben, but I'm curious, how many different platforms go into a building that you build today? You know, is that, you know, how many different opportunities to gather data do you even have in a typical build today?
A lot. I don't have a number for you, but now that you asked the question, I kind of want to go through the exercise and count. But I mean, the opportunities are endless. I don't think that there's a max, or if there is, we haven't found it yet. And in terms of the systems that we're currently integrating, I mean, it's definitely, I don't know, more than 25, less than 50, something like that. I mean, it's a lot. One of the things, there's just so many opportunities, right? And you don't even think about them existing until you come across a platform that allows you to capture it. I mean, one of the things that we're really excited about that pushed that midstream shift from one platform to the other was the KS Nexus integration. And I don't know if you guys know what Nexus is, but it's it's basically like the CRM platform that a lot of clubs and membership offerings use. But we're using it to allow our members to reserve conference rooms in our co-working spaces. And this is something we were planning to do pre-COVID, but obviously now in this new reality, it's looking like it was the right place to kind of focus our time and attention. But allowing somebody to go onto our app, which is a proprietary piece of technology that we've invested a lot of money in, but go into the app and, be able to reserve a conference room for a very specific amount of time, and to have that reservation then trigger the creation of a digital credential that then is also available for use on the app. So in the course of, a 15-second interaction with the app, you're interfacing with 3 different systems, and the experience is seamless from the customer's perspective. But from our perspective, then all of a sudden you're able to kind of track not only the usage of the space, but all sorts of other kind of customer health metrics and KPIs that we wouldn't be able to otherwise unless they were connected on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that it triggers me to think about, so there's been a discussion around buildings like yours beginning to have operating systems, if you would, right? So where all these little things plug into, you have an application, you have back end, and you have, data visualization, the rest. I guess, how do you see the term, they used to be called building management systems, I guess, in a lot of ways, right? But if you look at it now as building operating systems, how do you all view, I guess, by you having your own application, you view it well, but let me, a couple of things. So assuming you do, I guess I'll take the next step question then, is where do you see it going? How automated do you see these things happening? Do you see it getting to the point, everyone wants it to be the Jetsons, it feels like, and I think COVID has sort of accelerated a bit of some of the adoptions, like a touchless and some of the room reservation that you said before, but like, how far do you see this going? And do you see it accelerating more, or are we just in a kind of an awkward period and then it'll sort of go down a little bit? And then, how do you view it? Sorry, that's a lot. No,
it's okay. It is a lot. Not your question, but the kind of topic that you referenced. And the way that we think about it is that, I guess I'll answer the question in 2 different ways. The first way is that, how do you make the building a platform that, tenants can interact with in the way that they want to and find most productive, but also ownership and management as well. And so fundamentally thinking about, we're building these physical things, right? They're buildings, they're spaces, they last a long time. But how do you do it in such a way that is hardware light and software heavy, so that over time, you don't end up looking silly by spending money on something that was not like a needle mover. We in a previous world, I worked for a company that did a lot of high-end condo development. And now you walk into a lot of the units we built and there's iPads on the wall, and it's like, why is there an iPad on the wall? It's like this relic of a time that was not that long ago. And it's like, the amount of money that we spend doing that is just not a needle mover. And so that's one way I'll answer the question, is like, how do you solve it with software instead of hardware to the greatest extent humanly possible? And the second way I'll answer the question is like, I feel like there's a tendency, and we suffer from it. I think a lot of our contemporaries in the space suffer from it. And I think just in general, the world is suffering from it right now, where it's like, how do we just throw as many features, as much stuff like into the cauldron as possible? And we're trying to move away from that. And I see kind of glimpses of the world moving away from it too, but it's like, you know, what are the things that actually matter? So like our app doesn't have everything. Like our app has access control, which, and we're able to deliver it in a way that I think is like really, really benefits the end user and makes it very user-friendly and pleasant to interact with the building from an access control perspective. Communication with management, which I also think is like very, very thoughtful and much better than you know, typical logging into a property management system back end and interacting with you know, property management in a non-traceable, kind of intuitive way, and event programming and RSVP. And that's really it. And maybe over time, the app will kind of continue to grow and incorporate more things. But I think making it a study in reduction instead of a study in addition is going to be good for us for the long term, and it's going to be good for, it's going to improve the customer experience as well.
Yeah, people talk about sort of that back in the day when you did a bunch of programming and you sat down and you try to get everything into it, this idea you have one button to go do everything. Now, then it moved to websites and then now apps. And it makes you wonder too, as you start to embed some of the voice activation and the rest, where some things you go into an app to go do, some things you just naturally have that happens when you enter into a space, like the light turns on. You know, you don't have to go into an app to do that necessarily, but the ability to sort of combine multiple textures and multiple technologies together to deliver an experience that makes sense and adds value, like you said, instead of adding costs and just trying to be somewhat trick, but actually delivering value to what people have. So yeah, I look forward to those days too. So yeah, so Ben, you've been great. I really appreciate you've been a good sport on answering all the questions that we had, and it's been I've learned a bunch of taking notes as we've been going on. So I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more information about X Company and yourself, where's the best place to do that?
Online, on social, xlife.co, or on our website, xliving.co is a good place to start.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you again, Ben, for taking the time to do this. Look forward to meeting you in person at some point. And if you need anything, reach out. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ben.
Thank you, guys. This was fun.